Something has gone wrong in the UFC, and if you've been watching closely, you can feel it. The fights are still happening, more than ever. The lights are still flashing, brighter than ever. The arenas are still packed, with record numbers.
It was the highest grossing UFC event, highest grossing event at the Sphere. Broke our record for #1 merch sales in UFC history.
The UFC was never just about two people punching each other in the face. It was about the stories, the grit, the underdogs, the rivalries, but most importantly, it was about giving the fans what they wanted.
This is why I love the UFC, because the best fight the damn best.
So the matchmakers will come to me, and I push these guys nonstop to make the best possible fights that we can make.
But now it's starting to feel like a brand on autopilot, and the scary part is that this decline isn't loud. It's quiet, professional, and profitable, because the UFC isn't crashing. It's selling out arenas, but that doesn't mean it's healthy. So how did we get here? How did the world's most electrifying fight promotion go from outlaw chaos to corporate choreography? To understand that, we need to go back, way back, to the early days. Before the suits, back when this was still a fight business, run by fight people.
Thank you to the fighting business, absolutely amazing.
One of my favorite new channels going right now.
The UFC has truly come a long way since its inception, from nothing more than human cockfighting to one of the fastest growing combat sports in the world to now a permanent part of the global sporting culture. It isn't neck and neck with soccer as Dana White likes to think, but the sport has been consistently growing in popularity since the mid-2000s, and every couple of years, there's a boom.
Floyd Mayweather throws his hands. Ronda would grab onto him and ragdoll him.
Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz laid the foundation. Brock Lesnar built a house. Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey raised an empire. And guys like Volkanovski, Oliveira, Topuria, Poirier, Pereira, I mean, they came in and carried the sport on their back in these last few years. And so, how do you show respect to greatness? You wear it. In 2016, when the ownership changed from Zuffa LLC to WME EMG, many fans were rightfully cautious that the product would suffer, but nothing too bad happened. While there was more push towards annoying money fights, the overall matchmaking was good, and for the most part, we got the fights we wanted to see. Their role was clear, to negotiate and secure deals, and they did that very well, because in 2019, ESPN announced a partnership with the UFC.
We got a new headquarters, we were sold, and we now have a partnership with ESPN.
Right out the gate, day one, these guys were incredible partners.
Based on the deal, ESPN was obligated to pay the UFC, regardless of the gate, the ratings, or the pay-per-view buys. Sweet deal, right? Unfortunately for the UFC and all of us, 2020 dragged the entire world to a stop. We went through the early days, the Brocktober era, the McGregor and Rousey once-in-a-lifetime events, but you know what truly immortalized the UFC? Their struggle and success during COVID. The entire sporting world, from the small organizations to the big leagues, had packed up and gone home, but the UFC was still there, still putting on shows in an empty arena, but trust me, the world was watching. The UFC was now a dynasty, but that still didn't stop them from trying. ESPN was paying them good money to put on shows in the empty Apex Arena, but the UFC was already looking ahead to hosting events in sold-out arenas, not just because it was more profitable, but it was the right thing to do.
And start to move out and start to, go to these different cities like we used to. The whole sport just goes to another level. I've been saying this for a long time. We got to get out of the Apex and start doing more events in all these different cities, and we're starting to do it. We're getting it done this year.
For the most part, minus fighter pay, I guess, the company did what was right. Their whole agenda was that they were the complete opposite of boxing. They were focused on giving fans what they wanted: good fights, sensible matchmaking, and violent entertainment at good value. It was fun while it lasted, because now we moved to the dark ages. In 2023, the UFC officially merged with the WWE under one giant company. Yeah, the fight game and scripted WWE wrestling lived under the same roof. That already felt weird, but hey, we survived the old ownership years ago, so we should be fine, right?
The gate was 11.5 million. UFC now holds the #1, 2, and 3 highest gate record of all time at the Kaseya Center. $7.7 million That's gate. The record gate for any Australian indoor arena. 1,370 sold out grossing event in arena history, and highest MMA event in California.
Yeah, no shit, you broke the record with ticket prices going through the roof. There was a disturbing rise in UFC ticket prices, especially since the TKO merger, but it was never really in the spotlight until UFC 306, aka UFC Noche. The cheapest ticket for that event was about $1,500, while the most expensive ones were around 40 grand. It was a mid-card and a box office bomb, so the UFC had to get their money back somewhere, but this wasn't an isolated incident. UFC 304, headlined by Bilal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards, had stupid ticket prices. Meanwhile, UFC 309, headlined by Jon Jones versus Stipe, a fight no one wanted to see, had ticket prices ranging from $600 at the cheapest to over $6 grand. Ticket prices were no longer fan-friendly, but that wasn't even the worst part. Despite the absurd price, the UFC wasn't struggling to sell seats because they weren't selling to us anymore. They had built not just a hardcore fan base, but a hardcore celebrity base. The front rows weren't filled with lifelong fight fans. They were packed with influencers, TikTok stars, and celebrities coming in for clout. And yeah, the events were still selling out, but it was bittersweet. Sold out shows used to mean the people were showing up for the fights. Now, it feels like they're showing up for the photo op and TikTok reels. This ties into the most pressing issue. This has been covered by a lot of other MMA content creators, but I'm going to yell about this too. I'm a content creator second, a fight fan first. The real problem with the current product is the complete lack of effort. There is no passion behind matchmaking anymore. No urgency, no fire, no commitment to giving fans the fight they actually wanted. It felt like the soul of the UFC, the thing that made it different from boxing, from scripted sports entertainment, from everything else, was slowly being drained. The UFC wasn't being run by fight people anymore. It was being managed by TKO Group Holdings, a committee of corporate wigs who saw the UFC through a business lens, not a fight fan lens. They weren't thinking about legacy or rivalries or rising stars. They were thinking about quarterly reports, stock performance, and brand synergy. And it showed.
Our adjusted EBITDA margin could be higher if we decided to do less international events, maybe even less domestic touring events of our UFC events, and do them at the Apex in Las Vegas where we own the arena. And when you're watching on TV, you can't tell if you're in a stadium or an arena or you're at the small Apex.
Look, I've clowned Bilal plenty of times for being dull, and I stand by it. Look, the man isn't exactly must-see TV, but here's the thing. He won. He did everything right. He fought whoever they gave him, stacked up the streak, and earned his shot. So how do you explain a guy like that getting iced out for over a year, leapfrogged by Colby Covington, who was inactive and 2-2 in his last 4, by the way, only to finally get a title shot on a card with overpriced tickets, and then zero promo after he actually won the belt? Like, come on, how am I supposed to take your business seriously? How do you explain the co-main events that feel slapped together, the legends being thrown into fights they didn't earn or want, and the bizarre silence around building the next generation of stars?
He's working his way up. He's climbing up the ladder, and everybody's like, he deserves this, and he deserves that, and he doesn't deserve anything.
How do you even begin to explain the travesty that is the Jon Jones obsession? If you didn't know, Jon Jones is now the second longest reigning heavyweight champion in UFC history, with exactly one title defense, and that title defense against Stipe Miocic, a legend, yes, but one who hadn't fought in over 3 years and was practically handpicked from their retirement home for one last cash grab. The UFC framed it as a legacy fight. In reality, it was a desperate attempt to squeeze one more box office moment out of two aging names instead of giving the division's killer, guys like Tom Aspinall, the spotlight they've earned. This isn't about competition anymore. It's about names. It's about nostalgia. It's about who looks best on billboards, not who's earned it in the cage, because the guy who fought, won, and bled for that belt, Tom Aspinall, gets left hanging in limbo. No date, no opponent, no clarity. Just another interview where he shrugs and says he doesn't know what's going on.
Do you think the Jon fight will happen?
I don't know.
Meanwhile, Dana White is out there promoting fucking Power Slap. The UFC has never been more profitable, but has it ever felt more soulless? You can feel it in the silence between the fights. The walkouts still look dramatic, the gloves still touch, but the energy is different, manufactured and hollow. It's no longer the organized chaos of Fight Night. It's Fight Night as a TV segment and a content drop. Every event used to feel like a collision course, a culmination of rivalries, storylines, and momentum. Now though, half the card is filled with names you don't know, fighting for reasons you don't care about, and the ones you do know, they're either being kept on the shelf for the right moment or getting tossed into matchups that feel more algorithmic than earned. The soul of MMA has always been its rawness, its unpredictability, its purity, that sense that anything could happen and every fight meant something. That's what pulled fans in and made them stay. But when fights are booked to fill slot instead of settle scores, when contenders are ignored in favor of fading stars, when title shots are handed out based on social media impressions, it stops feeling like a sport. The UFC, after years of struggle and setbacks, has now achieved immortality, but it looks like it cost them their very soul. And maybe that's the price of greatness. But damn, was it worth it? Look, maybe Dana White and the OG UFC crew still want to make this work. Maybe deep down they still care about the fights, the fans, and the legacy they built from the ground up. But this isn't the same game anymore. This isn't the UFC of Zuffa or even the early WME days. This is TKO Group Holdings, a corporate machine built to please shareholders, not fight fans. And in that world, passion takes a backseat to profit. So maybe it's not that they don't care, maybe they just can't do it the way they used to. Either way, the result feels the same, a product with more polish than ever, but no soul.
For the shirts, get 5% off using code TFB, links is down below. And if you haven't watched the 315 Deep End, apparently my take on Bilal has people losing their mind. Whatever.